My name is Simon Emms, and so just a bit of admin. Initially, this talk was entitled The Beekeeper's Guide to Mentoring Engineers. For various reasons, I'm doing a different talk today, which is, as you can see, tech is broken and I won't fix it. So if anybody thinks that sounds boring, I won't take any offence. If you want to leave, that's fine now, but do it now. Okay, welcome. My name is Simon, and I'm here to talk about why I think tech is broken and AI won't fix it. So the focus of this talk is primarily going to be on the first section, the tech is broken, and what we as engineers and senior engineers can do to hopefully improve that. And I also think in a lot of these places where I think it is broken, AI won't make it any better, and in many cases might actually make it worse if we just continue blindly down the path that we're going. Okay, so the original inspiration for this talk was a really poor recruitment experience I had about 12 months ago now, and I had this really bad experience at recruiting. And basically what happened was a guy phoned me up. He said, hello, we're looking for somebody to come and help our platform team. And I said, yep, that's brilliant, that's exactly what I do. And he said, we want you to come in and we want you to be opinionated. We want you to be an opinionated leader to help us fix some of our previous mistakes. And I went, yep, that's good, I can do that, I've done that many times in the past. And he said, there won't be any technical tests, and it's going to be a two-stage interview process. I went, that's brilliant, that sounds good. And then we got to the end of that, no problem. He said, right, I'd like to get you back in for another one. Yeah, no worries. And then about 2 days later, I had an email come to him, and it said, right, okay, so the first stage is a technical test, and then the next 3 stages are going to be this. And I said, well, hang on a minute, I thought you said there's going to be no technical test, and it's only going to be a further stage. And he went, oh, no, I've changed my mind on that. And I went, well, okay, this is my opinion. I don't agree with that for these reasons. And he said, we don't want you to be, I don't care about your opinion. To which I said, I thought you wanted to be opinionated. He said, oh yeah, when you start here, not at this point. Okay. And I went down the pub with a mate of mine and was whinging about this, and he said, stop your whinging, this is actually a good idea for a talk, get talking on it. So here we are. One of the big problems I think we have in tech as a whole is we don't actually know how to recruit engineers. The first one is how many rounds of an interview we do. Some people say 1 interview, other people go, oh, we've got to have 11 interview stages and we've got to really make it look, and the people just fall out because they get bored. Well, what are you doing at each of those stages to make those interview stages worthwhile? If you're just having 11 conversations with people, what's the purpose of them? If you're only having 1, how do you make sure that you've got the right things and that they know the right things about you as a company and a team? We also have technical tests. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of technical tests. Do you know the reason why I don't like technical tests? Because I'm shit at them. I've been doing tech for a long time. I've been doing this nearly 20 years. I'm really good at my job. My job is not doing technical tests. I know some people I've worked with in the past, and they're absolutely brilliant at technical tests. They're not what I would call people whose opinion is tech I respect. That's the polite way I'm going to say it on camera today. But how does that actually help? So we've got this technical test. We've then got to have the conversation of what type of technical test. Is it going to be leak code? Is it going to be the dreaded whiteboard interview? Is it going to be architecting something when your actual job is junior engineer and you're not going to be listened to when you try and architect something? What is making a junior engineer who really doesn't know an awful lot? What is the point of making them architect something where then that's not actually their job? The other thing that I always think is, now, as engineers, we like a feedback loop. That's what the DevOps cycle is. It's just an ultimate feedback loop. How do we get accurate feedback on interviews? Because the person we're interviewing is trying to impress us. If I say to somebody, right, I'm not going to give you the job, but what did you think of the interview process? Oh, it was shit because you didn't give me a job. Okay, fair enough. Was it actually shit? Or are you just grumpy because I didn't give you a job? If I haven't told you whether I'm going to give you the job or not, are you going to say, oh, yeah, it's brilliant, absolutely loved it? I can't be certain it's an accurate feedback loop and that information I'm getting is accurate. Even if we anonymise a test, can we actually be definitely certain that we're saying this is a truly anonymised test or a survey that we're being given out? Unless I know what it is coming in, unless I'm the person who knows it, can I be honestly truthful about what I'm saying in these there? A lot of people then just go, well, let's just follow the FANG. Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Don't like acronyms, so I like to explain what it means. Well, that's great. But I'm a 3-person startup in Birmingham. Can I legitimately say I'm going to make it exactly like a FANG interview because that's what FANG do? When, one, I'm not FANG. A friend of mine went to work for Amazon about 6 or 7 years ago. He's an architect there, does a very good job. And one of the reasons he had, I think it was 7 interview stages. And when he got the job later on, he said, why is there so many in the interview stages? And he said, and the person who interviewed him said, well, we just have that many because people then drop out. And it then becomes a method of attrition to see how far you can get. Now, that was an anecdote. I don't know actually how true that is, but I've heard that from a few places. Is that is resilience, and whether you can be bothered to stay into an interview process into the 7th or 8th hour, is that an accurate appreciation of somebody's technical skills? It's also, you're going to get a lot of people who go, this is not worth it for me doing 7, 8, 9 hours worth of free work for some multi-billion-dollar company. I can do better things with my time. I can be better appreciated. My sister, she works for the NHS, and one of her jobs is recruiting surgeons. She works for the NHS in Bath, about 100 miles west of here. And I was talking to her one day, and I said, so how do you actually recruit a surgeon? She said, well, we have a conversation with them. We interview them, we check their qualifications, we verify their qualifications are as what they say they are, we talk about them, we have a conversation. And I said, okay, that's great, that sounds a bit like tech. Do you do any technical tests as well? She said, no, apparently it's wildly unethical to chop somebody's leg off an interview. Who knew? But that's what we're effectively asking people to do by saying, go and build this application in a test scenario. Okay, so who agrees with this statement, please? Hands up. Let's get you doing some exercise. Oh, we've already got one hand up now. Thank you very much. Right, keep your hands up if my company struggles to recruit well-trained engineers. That's a good number of hands there. Keep your hands up if your company also recruits junior engineers and trains them up. So a lot of hands went down, some hands went up. I'm very pleased to see that some hands stayed up. That's good. A lot of companies that I've worked with view junior engineers as a cost centre, and I think that's wrong. Junior engineers are your future senior engineers. This is even more true with AI. A lot of people have said AI coding is going to kill the junior engineer path. Great. How are we going to get the future senior engineers? You don't just magically get a senior engineer out of nowhere, but a lot of companies do treat it as we only recruit senior engineers. And it's somebody else's job to make those junior and intern engineers into senior engineers. Junior engineers, I'm going to make a case for recruiting junior engineers here. So if you're one of these people and you're in a position of authority in your company, I would advocate recruiting junior engineers. They force senior engineers to explain things better. They force you to collaborate better, to coach better and to inspire better. One of my jobs as a senior engineer is to mentor people. What actually the original talk should have been today was mentoring people and some of those experiences that I found. But by mentoring people, not only are you making the junior engineers better, you're making your senior engineers better. Now there's a direct correlation with that because the point of senior engineer is you've got to go and explain it to new people. Even if you bring a senior engineer into your company, a new senior engineer who doesn't know what you're doing, the senior engineers have to tell them, this is how we do things, this is what we're doing, and we build things like this, and this is actually how we do things in this company. And can you please also tell us how you would improve that? They're also the ones who are going to be talking to customers. Customers aren't going to know anything about your product until you're the expert in your product. If you're going out there and talking to customers and potential users and other developers and DevX and what have you, you've got to be able to communicate that with people. It also creates psychological safety and empathy, which is something that as engineers we can be lacking. I work for a coding boot. I did some work with a coding boot camp for a couple of years ago in Birmingham, and the junior engineers struggled to get jobs after this coding boot camp because a lot of people would go, we're not going to recruit people from a coding boot camp. But the difference is that I was working with these people for 12 weeks, I think it was. They were really, really good. They needed help, they needed moulding, but they were really, really good people who were good at their job. The teamwork part of it as well. Now the team is the most important unit of your company, of your engineering cohort. You might have one big team, you might have many small teams. A couple of years ago, I was the leader of a platform team, and there's 4 engineers in there, and my job actually changed from what I was recruited for, because I recognised that the job I was recruited for was not needed within this team. We had 3 brilliant engineers. My job as lead engineer wasn't necessary. What I actually ended up becoming was an engineering manager, because that was the bit that team lacked. But of course we had 4 people. So we had me as the lead engineer. We had the best engineer, shall we say, who was absolutely brilliant, and people would always go to him and say, Antoine, can you help me with this? And a lot of his time was spent explaining things to people. We'd have Billy as well, who was just as capable as Antoine, but was not quite as well known. So he was he was a really, really good engineer, but everyone would go to the other guy. And then we had Connor, who was the nominal junior engineer as well. And one of the things that I had to say to them all, we are all playing roles. Just because you're the junior engineer or you're the lead engineer doesn't make you better or worse than anybody else. We are in a team and we're all fulfilling roles. So sometimes I'm going to be the junior engineer if this is on, BGP network, which was always confused me, which was a lot of things we had to do in there. I'm going to be the junior engineer in there. But if it's something on how to scale lots of Kubernetes clusters, well, that's my wheelhouse. I'm going to be able to lead that. And it's all about playing different roles. I also think Agile is broken. Who uses Agile in their workflow? There's a couple of very lucky people who haven't put their hands up. Now, one of the reasons I say Agile is broken is because we have all these frameworks, whether it's Kanban, Scrum, XP, or whatever you want to call it. That is the entirety of the Agile Manifesto. If you go to agilemanifesto.org, I think it is, that is the first page. Slightly cut off, but it's 4 aspects. Where's the daily stand-up in there? I can't see it. What about your sprint retrospective and all the other ceremonies that we have? Now, I know those are different flavours of Agile, but the different flavours of Agile often detract from this point. Working software. I've worked in places before where they go, oh, we can't finish this sprint until the documentation is done. But we've got working software. Oh, no, we've got to have the documentation before we can declare this finished. Now, if we prioritise working software over comprehensive documentation, for example, I would argue that is done, according to the definition of the Agile Manifesto. As another little side point about Agile, if we don't start a retrospective by going over the actions of the previous sprint, is that a worthwhile retrospective? I don't know. I don't think it is. A number of times where somebody goes in, right, okay, what was good, bad and indifferent this sprint? Well, we've got 17 actions from the previous sprint, probably too many, but neither here, it doesn't matter. Can we go over these to make sure we've done? Because I know a lot of places I've worked, the first time they're looked at is 20 minutes before the next retrospective. My experience of Agile is, or a lot of companies is, they say that we're Agile because they use Jira and have a stand-up. Who listens in stand-up? I certainly don't. I very often drift off because there's always one person who just drones on and on and on and on and on. And I did this yesterday and I did that and then I had another and then this. Who cares? If you do have somebody who's like that in your sprints and you have to have a stand-up because of team politics, run it to the rules of just a minute. No hesitation, repetition or deviation. Speak for 60 seconds. That's how I like to run my stand-ups. Bias is a big topic in tech at the moment, and I think rightly so. We all have biases. We all have unconscious biases. How do we know? It's unconscious. I don't know what my unconscious biases are. I can only necessarily say what somebody else's unconscious biases are, and they might be able to say what my unconscious biases are, but I can't tell because they're unconscious. Let's imagine a conversation. So it's a conversation that we might have had with our mothers. Hello, I'm sorry I'm late. I've just come back. I've just been to the doctor. Oh, great. What did he say? Well, she. At no point have I said that the doctor is a man. And my mother has assumed that the doctor is a man because that's her biases. So I can say to my mum, well, actually, my doctor's female. This is who she is. She's worked at this, that, and the other. And I can have that conversation and say to my mum, doctors are not all men. It's fine. I can have that conversation with a fellow human. Let's do this doctor test with AI. I've just seen a couple of knowing smiles. I assume everyone knows where I'm going with this. I said to deep AI, draw me a picture of a doctor. White man with glasses. White man with glasses. White man with glasses. White man with glasses. White man without glasses. White woman without glasses. Okay, fair enough. How do I say to AI to check your assumptions? AI is not a thing where you can necessarily have a feedback loop. It's also not deterministic. So it might then go, well, I'm going to do it for Simon. I'll do somebody who's not an old white man with glasses, but everybody else will be the old white man with glasses. This is a picture of my doctors in Telford, where I live. No old white man with glasses. Now, that's an old white man with glasses. I think that's a disgrace. Thank you for the laughter. Coding. Now, this is another big topic in tech at the moment. I'm old enough. I'm 43. I started 20 odd years ago. My first journey into coding was to go on Stack Overflow and say, how do I do this? I'd then get shouted at by somebody saying, why are you doing it like that? And of course, with Stack Overflow, I think there's a few people who probably use Stack Overflow, maybe we still do. It can be good, it can be bad, and if you copy and paste it from Stack Overflow, you're effectively copying and pasting blindly. You don't know whether this is good, whether it's bad. Once it's in your code base, committed, etc., it's there and you have to maintain it. Is AI code generation just a way of automating that, making it a lot faster to get shit code into your code base? There's a meme going around this week I noticed where it's how we used to do it 20 years ago. We'd go onto Stack Overflow and then we'd spend 6 hours writing it and then 3 hours debugging it. Whereas now with AI we can get it all in there instantly, but we can spend 24, 48 hours debugging it as well. Are we just setting up a time for ourselves for future problems? Humans, one of the things about humans which is unique is the spark of creativity. That moment of inspiration. It might be you've come back from a walk, it might be you've had a shower and you've thought, oh, this solves that problem. That is uniquely human. I don't believe you can replicate that with AI. If Gen AI uses large language models to generate all code, and it looks at those from what was done in the past. It might be an old version of the thing you're using. It might be the absolute latest version. It might be good. It might be bad. If we use 100% AI-generated code, when they're looking at past code to look at, how long before it's just regurgitating other AI code? Will we get to a stage, if we go for extreme, no human code is generated, will we get to a stage where no interesting code, nothing unique is ever created again? It's a thought experiment. It's not, I don't think it's realistic. I think there'll always be some people who go, I'm going to write my code by hand fully, and other people will say, I'm going to write my code by AI fully. But if you go to the extreme, where does that new code come from? Going back to, I mentioned earlier on Just a Minute, Radio 4 show. Another one of my favourite Radio 4 shows is I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. There's a game in there where you just name tube stations. It's very funny, honestly. To anybody who's not British and never heard it, trust me, this is proper British humour. But of course, everybody knows you can't go from Gloucester Road to Heathrow Terminal 1, 2 and 3. But I've played Mornington Crescent with AI, and I've gone for hours and hours and hours, and it never goes to Mornington Crescent to finish the game. Because it just follows, I'll do this because that's what other people have done. Is it going to are you going to end up with feedback loops where it just goes back and back and back and goes on and on and on? Random blank screen there. I don't know what that was. There we go. I was pressing the wrong button on here, that's why. What can we do? I think the best thing we can do is be an empathetic human. AI cannot by definition be empathetic. It can simulate empathy, But the best way you can be empathetic is going, if I was in this situation and I was talking to this other person, how would I feel? What would make me feel better? And if you're not naturally an empathetic human, that's fine. You can ask them. It is allowed. You can say, I don't know how to make you feel better. I don't know how to work best with you. Can you please tell me what I can do to make your life better, to make your work better? That is a perfectly legitimate question to ask. Develop engineers. We're all developers. We know how to build something from nothing. Take those same principles of building something from nothing and do the same with engineers. There's a rule that I've called it the Peep Show rule. There's a TV show in the UK called Peep Show, very, very funny. The same writers who did it have gone over to make Succession in the US. And one of the rules they had in their writer's room is, you can't say no to a joke. And I run that in my teams as well. You can't say no to an idea. You can say, I can make this idea better if we do this. I think that's a better way. But you can't say, no, that is shit, you can't do that. That is the rule that I run in my teams. That is another thing that we can do. Treat AI as your unreliable colleague. I'm an unreliable engineer. Sometimes I do absolutely brilliant work. Other times I come back and look at it 3 months later going, what idiot wrote that? Look at Git blame. Oh, it was me. I write crap code. Don't assume that AI is right because it's got those letters AI. And the point is that this stuff is not easy. People who are making claims about AI solving all your problems, they're selling you something. Remember the famous line in the film, The Princess Bride? Life is pain, and anybody who tells you otherwise is selling you something. If somebody says that AI is going to solve all your problems, they're probably selling AI. That is my talk. I'm open for questions. I've put a QR code on there as well. If you want to get in touch with me, please do so there. If you want to leave me feedback on my talk, please do so as well. And I'll be taking questions. I think I've probably got another 3 or 4 minutes. Oh, I've got 5 minutes. Time that all right? Yes, please, questions. Anybody? I think there's a microphone coming around as well. There's no microphone coming around. I'll just repeat it for the benefit of the tape. Yeah. Okay, so the question was about have I worked with government, because it does things slightly differently to FANG. I've worked with the UK government and I've worked with the American defence sector. I've worked with those as a consultant, not in a recruitment capacity, no. Is there anything that you want to share that maybe could help? Yeah. So Jan was saying that the consultant role, basically it's similar to, if I understand it was similar to how it works in the military where you're effectively a number and they can't pay quite as highly. Am I right from your accent, you're German? Yeah. Never worked with the German government, so I don't know. I have done a bit of stuff with the UK government, and that's a similar experience that I'm told by friends of mine who do work in UK government departments as well. One thing I would say, actually, I'm not the greatest fan of the 2010 onwards government, but one of the best things they ever did was they set up the, it's called GDS, the Government Digital Systems. They've done an absolutely brilliant job, and I know some of the stuff that actually work in the central GDS department, they do pay well, and they do have a really good ethos, and they do very, very good work. In terms of actual government departments, they still pay them threepence halfpenny. And they're sort of half the pay of what they would be in the private sector as well. So I guess it's which way you go. It's depending on which section you're in. We have time for one more question. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I thought that was your hand up to say. Yes.
And how the AI perceived generating that image. What do you think it's going to take as we bring in the next wave of engineers to change? Is that going to be how the inputs that we put into these models, or do you think that'll evolve over time, or do you think it's going to stay the same?
Can I have an easy question, please? Yeah, question was, what do I think it's going to take to sort of sort out the inputs and to sort out the biases in AI? This is where I'm vastly underqualified to talk about the question. My gut feeling is that it's a human solution. It's not. It goes back to what I said about treat AI as an unreliable colleague. In the same way as my mum assumed that my doctor was male. That's based on 1,200 years of history. It's not an unreasonable assumption that my doctor would be male. Based on 2024 as it was when I had it, it is an unreasonable assumption. But if you say, I'm going to generate a picture of a doctor, and if you don't notice that it's all old white men in glasses, then the problem is on you. It's not the problem on the AI, is my argument. Very happy to take alternative answers on that if somebody else has got a different viewpoint. One more question if there's time for it. Well, no, there is time for it if anyone's got one. Yes.
What is your ideal interview process?
My ideal what, sorry?
Ideal interview process.
Oh, what's my ideal interview process? I like a good conversation. Is personally how I like to do it. I like to say, what are you good at? And I don't mean it in the sense of tell me your biggest weakness, because that's a crap question. But I'm very happy. I want people to come into an interview. When I interview somebody, I want that person to get the job. And that's true of all interviews I go on, because that's a really good use of my time. If I come to my boss and say, right, I've got 4 candidates here, they're all really good, and I think we could offer all 4 of them the job, and they get all 4 of the job, that's really good use of my time because I've been good. Or that's been a good process for me. Give them the real problems that you've actually got. It's no good saying, right, build me a linker table. How many times have you ever done that in your real job? Oh, I've done more about 15 years. Right, great. So it's a completely pointless question then. If you're going to do a technical test, and if that's just how your process is and that's what you think is a good thing, that's fine. I'm not against what you think is a good process. Make it relevant. Whatever questions you're asking, make it relevant to the job that they're applying for. And if you think, right, okay, it is a perfectly legitimate thing to say, our code base is crap, we haven't got a clue, we're in mess. Great. So you're going to want somebody who's different to, this is a perfect code base and it's absolutely perfect and it's running on everything. Different. You possibly wanted a different engineer. So ask questions regarding that and model it around what you're actually going to be making them do in that process. Right. I think that is my time up. Thank you very much, everybody, and please tell me what you think.